Welcome back to Season 5 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 196, Season 5, episode 32. Last week was a tough episode to put together, harsh realization, but onward and upward, new step every day, and I got a couple of job offers, and ironically enough, they're both kind of pertaining to the preparedness world, so good stuff going on there, facing the realities of what to do with my podcast, because it takes so much time, so kind of tossing around an idea that maybe I could put them together on the weekend if I was doing my own topics and not having so many guests on. So maybe do like a guest a month, something like that. So anyway, we'll just see how that goes. But for now, we're going to still just call it Season 5. And then we're going to go on a break for a little bit and kind of see what my schedule looks like. Hopefully, I'll be working close to home where I can continue my training schedule and teaching self-defense classes because that's really what I love to do. So we're working on that and trying to keep our chicken farm going and cleaning coops and still dealing with the rain. I don't know what is going on with our world right now, but we are still dealing with rain here in California, and we're we're kind of done with it at this point. We needed it, but we're kind of all good there. So, and also getting the garden planted, not stressing on it as much this year because it's been cold for so long. So that's not, it's great for your seeds and all that. So, but we're going to be working on that here coming up. We just had our pump go down at our house, and, it's so expensive to have to put everything into that. So my husband, the whiz that he is, he got it all set, do the best you can with what you got, and got us all involved, and the whole family, we got the pump fixed and repaired on our own without having to hire out to do that. So really fun stuff. Once you get into kind of studying about preparedness and self-reliance and things like that, you just learn how to make do. And that's one of the most exciting parts about entering the survival realm, or however you want to label that. Good stuff, though. So last week in Dark Days in Denver, we went with Vince back to the homesteads. Saw what happened there. How did that whole story play down? And he got reunited with Daniel and Nancy. So everything was looking pretty good there. This week, we're going to catch back up with Erica, and she's just dreaming of escaping these men that have captured her. And, as one person with, 5 guys around, good luck, right? So today I wanted to take a look at the differences between being a man and being a woman in these long-term survival situations, and what some of the realities for women facing these long-term survival situations are. So here to help discuss it with me today, it's Doug Hogan. Doug is no stranger to my show, and or L. Douglas Hogan is his writing name, and I always love having Doug on. Wealth of information and a lot of fun to hang out with. Great guy. So I can't wait to welcome him on later. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into Chapter 32 of Dark Days
Chapter
in Denver.
32. Erica flopped along in a daze over Swenson's shoulder. His grip squeezing into her body, she hardly even noticed anymore. Wait for your moment. Just wait for your moment, she kept telling herself. There was always a moment. A chance for escape in the past. Maybe they're alive, she told herself over and over. Suddenly, Swenson threw Erica on the ground. A rock poked sharply into her hip. Wake up! You're walking, Swenson barked at her. Erica just lay there helplessly. Wait for your moment, she thought, watching Serge approach to get her up. Swenson stopped him with a hand motion, watching Erica. I said, wake up, he demanded again. Out of the corner of her eye, Erica watched his hand slide to his whip. He slid it out of its holster. Erica stood up quickly, facing him. And see? There you go, fellas, he boasted proudly. Erica glared at him fiercely, but said nothing. What? He asked her. Erica wanted him to approach. Just come a little closer. she demanded in her head. You want to discuss it with Sheila? He asked, fondling the handle. Swenson, that's enough, Commander Gray snapped at him. Let's just take a break. Serge, you want to make some grub? I'm not cooking. Let's let the girlie do it. I carried her half the day anyway, Serge answered. Erica looked over at them, curious about what their decision would be. If her hands were free for just 2 minutes, she might be able to break free and get back to Denver. The men looked at Erica. That's not a bad idea, Commander Gray agreed. Serge, that's a horrible idea, Swenson interrupted. He was standing back, watching Erica's mind work. There was a spark when the suggestion was made. He knew little rats like this girl. They would keep gnawing and gnawing until the rope that was holding them was snapped. Chain her to a tree. She'll be good for nothing except headaches. And I don't want any of you getting too close to her either. Commander Gray trusted Swenson's instincts. He was a dark man, but he knew how to get a job done, and Commander Gray respected him for that. Do as he says, and then make some food, Serge. Make Merkley do it, Serge protested. Serge took the end of the chain and hooked it around a tree with a lock. There you go, little pet girly dog, Serge cursed at her as he left. Erica sat quietly, watching the men. Bishop was on weapons detail, cleaning armaments for the next round of battle. She watched him dismantle the gun and run the smooth rag over the tiny surfaces. Merkley was forced to make the meal while Serge played solitaire with his cards. Swenson was often not present from the party, and then Erica would spot him, remotely watching her. Erica never wanted to hate people, even people that did her wrong. She believed everyone had their reasons, and everyone was a child of God. Swenson was an exception to the rule. This man took Vince from her, and she hated him. When she would catch him watching her, she would hold his gaze, knowing that one day she would kill him. She looked around at the ghost town they were in. Even back before the quake, this town probably wasn't much more than a gas station, hardware store, and a restaurant. Nowadays, it was a minuscule stop on the way to the canyon ferry crossing. Maybe they would come this way looking for me, she thought. Scooting up closer to the tree, Erica tore off a small strip of material from the back of her shirt. She dug into the wounds on her back, making them bleed. Then she painted the initials EM on the material in blood. She put it into her waistline, reserving the flag for the perfect spot. We got visitors, Bishop announced quietly, as a group of 4 men came around the edge of the building. Swenson was already covering Erica's head with a burlap sack that he fastened with a chain around her neck. Erica's experience under a black cloth hood was dark, and she couldn't see a thing. The burlap hood allowed her to see, and there was air, but the material was itchy beyond belief. Hey fellas, how we doing? A man from the group asked. Just fine, how about yourselves? Commander Gray answered. Erica watched the approaching men fanning out slightly around the talker. Commander Gray's men closed in tighter to protect him. See, you got a fine woman chained to that tree over there, the man commented. She's not for sale, Commander Gray replied. What about for rent? The man asked. My boy sure wouldn't mind getting a piece of that tonight. He turned and laughed with the group of men he approached with. She's not for rent either, Commander Gray said flatly. Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're going to keep some refugee whore all to yourselves, the man argued upset. Now even Swenson took his focus off Erica and applied it to the men. I can make it worth your while, she heard the man say. Commander Gray's men set up a barrier between Erica and the approaching men, shielding her from their advances. She scooted her butt through her arms so her hands could reach her shoelaces. She tied her boots' laces together through the zip ties on her wrists. Then she rocked back and forth, pumping her legs in and out like she was on a bicycle. The friction heated the zip tie and it broke, freeing her hand. She rapidly went to work on her feet. The men were still engaged in conversation, so she swooped backwards around the tree, working on the lock and retying her boots. Then, following the tree's line of sight, she ran as fast as she could. Reaching the other side of the building, she slipped behind it and picked the lock on the hood, tossing it to the ground. She grabbed a piece of broken glass, tied her tiny strip of material to a sign, and continued to run into the forest that was outside of the town. She ran as fast as her feet could carry her until she heard Swenson's voice. Come out, wherever you are," Swenson yelled into the forest. "Sheila wants to have a little chat." He pointed to the sides and Bishop and Serge headed out on the left and right flank. Erica slid to the ground, wanting to just disappear, become one with the tree so they can never find her. "Damn it, Swenson, I told you she was your responsibility," the commander chided him. "She's right here, Carl. I can smell her," he assured his commander. "Yeah, well, I better see her real quick," Commander Gray snapped. "She's here, boss," Serge confirmed, looking at a small screen on a device in his hand. Erica melted down into a tangle of branches and held as still as possible, steadying her breath. She took the piece of glass and held it to the tattoo on her arm. Serge was closing in on her location. She heard his footsteps crackling through the branches. She closed her eyes, hesitant to shove the glass into her arm to remove the tracker. "She's in this area, but I can't pinpoint the signal," Serge told Swenson. "Don't do anything stupid," the commander spoke to the forest. "That tracker is hooked to your artery. You'll die if you try to remove it." Erica stared at the glass shard, watching it cut into her hand, but it was her only weapon. "Let's check over this way," Erica heard Serge whisper to Bishop. Listening to the sound of Serge and Bishop's steps walking away, she slowly peeked up out of her hiding spot. Just as she was about to make a break for it, a whip collapsed around her neck. Swenson pulled on the handle and she was ripped back out of the brush. "Here she is," Swenson boasted, holding her up on her tippy toes with the whip around her neck. Erica lashed out at him with the piece of glass, but he held her up higher. She dangled, choking in the air, her hopes of escape deflated. Swenson squeezed her hand with the glass in it. It cut deeper into her flesh. When he released his hold, she dropped the shard. "Don't let it happen again, Swenson," Commander Gray insisted, looking him in the eye. "This capture is going to make our careers." "It won't," Swenson promised, holding her up a little higher. Then he pulled on his whip in such a way that it broke free from her neck. Erica fell to the ground, gasping for air. As Swenson approached, her training kicked in, and she rapidly regained her composure. The moment had come. Her restraints were gone. She rolled over to her side and stood, looking Swenson in the eyes. "Get on your knees now," he insisted. She stood defiantly in front of him. "Get on your knees," he barked, trying to shove her to the ground. Erica evaded his attempt. Her eyes locked on him. "You think you can take me, girlie?" Swenson asked her. Erica looked up and down, set on doing whatever she needed to for her freedom. "She does. She thinks she can take me," he laughed at her. "Carl, come on. You have to let me." "Erica, just get on your knees," Commander Gray told her. Erica stood there. Her gaze never left Swenson. Commander Gray huffed deeply. Swenson gestured with his palm turned upward. "Fine. Go ahead," Commander Gray acquiesced. "But leave Sheila out of it." Erica went into a fighting stance. "Check this out," Serge laughed. "She's so tiny." Swenson circled around her. "You're going to regret this, girlie," he teased her. She waited for him to grow impatient. When he did, he swung for her head and she ducked. She came back up with an uppercut, but he reached out and caught her arm. Pulling him forward and further off balance, Erica hooked his foot and he fell hard on his face. She smiled at him as he got up. "Cute trick," he told her, reaching for his whip. "Swenson, don't do it," the commander insisted, entertained by the sparring match. Swenson came in after her with a flurry of punches, which she avoided, but it was all a ruse to get her off guard. He tackled her suddenly, landing in a fully mounted position. He rained down a flurry of punches at her face. Some connected, but most of them she deflected with her elbows as she protected her face. When he went to land his next punch, Erica reached out, underhooking his arm and rolling him over into an armbar. Swenson knew the moves from his years as a mixed martial arts fighter and rolled back through her armbar. He pressed his knees hard into her abdomen. "What you got now, girlie?" he asked, smacking her in the face repeatedly. "You got tricks? Well, guess what? I got tricks too. Now get on your knees." He backed off and stood over her. Erica turned and shot at his ankle, taking him back down to the ground. She went to flip his leg and end up by his stomach, but Swenson saw it coming and kicked her furiously in the stomach. Erica lost all her breath and heaved over, gagging. She hadn't eaten in so long, there was nothing to throw up. But she would not be bested. She regained her composure and stood in front of him again. "Really, Carl? What the hell am I supposed to do with this?" Swenson asked. "I don't know. That's your realm," Commander Gray responded. "I'll tell you what I do with disobedient refugees," Swenson responded, grabbing his whip from its housing. "Do what you gotta do, but not the face, and don't break a bone," Commander Gray acquiesced to Swenson. "Now it's gonna get fun," Commander Gray mentioned to Bishop. "Here comes Sheila." The men watched Erica standing defiantly, staring down Swenson. She was confident Swenson would not do it. The Supreme General would be furious if she came in all cut up. But Swenson was skilled. He threw the whip out and caught Erica around the neck. Then he ripped her to the ground. She went to get up, but he wrapped the tip around her ankle and pulled her leg out. She flipped in the air and hit the dirt again. Before she could pick herself up, he flicked it again and laid another strap across the same one he put vertically on her back before. The pain of the lash connecting with the old strike made Erica scream out in pain. She fell on her side. "Get on your knees," Swenson told her, standing over her. She slowly shoved herself up, her back screaming in pain. Kneeling in front of him, she awaited his next move. "See? That wasn't so tough," he laughed. "Look up at me," he insisted. As she did, he punched her across the face. Kneeling by her in the dirt, he whispered in her ear, "Don't you ever run from me again." "Dinner is ready, guys," Merkley announced to them. He was questioning the traitorous choice he made, but it was too late now. "Swenson, chain her back up. No mistakes," Commander Gray ordered. Swenson delighted in the pain it caused Erica to strap her arms back. He re-zipped her feet as well. Everything was tight and cut into her skin. Her mouth watered as she watched them eating. It had been days. "You guys got scraps?" Bishop asked the men, looking at Erica. "She doesn't need it," Swenson insisted. "You want to carry her again?" Bishop asked, gathering the scraps from the other men. "Fine. Let me have the plate. I don't want anyone near her. This dog can bite," Swenson told him. "You want food?" Swenson asked. Erica stared at him quietly. Grateful Bishop spoke up on her behalf. "Here's your food," Swenson taunted her, spitting onto the plate. He mixed it up with the other food that everyone pitched in. Erica was sickened by Swenson's actions. Somewhere in the food he was shoveling into her mouth was his saliva. She wanted to puke, but she was so hungry. Plus, she knew if she wanted to survive, she needed the nutrition. She ate the slop, gagging after every bite, while Swenson sat there laughing at her.
Really great drama in this chapter as Erica makes this escape attempt. I love writing stories like these, and so that's one of the reasons why Swenson's character is a lot of fun for me to write, even though he's this really, really mean guy. And she just cannot escape his clutches no matter how hard she tries. All of what she knows how to do and all her tactics aren't working this time. And obviously a very frustrating situation. Wouldn't be anything you want to experience. However, it really got me thinking about the differences between being a man and a woman in a long-term survival situation. And these differences have to be looked at because women have to realize both the strengths and the weaknesses that they have in those types of situations. You have to realize them ahead of time so that you can be ready to handle them and be properly prepared to, survive and thrive in a situation like that. So here to help discuss this topic with me today is L. Douglas Hogan. L. Douglas Hogan has been featured on seasons 2, 3, 4, and 5. L. Douglas Hogan is a USMC veteran with over 20 years in public service. Among these are 3 years as an anti-tank infantryman, 1 year as a Marine Corps marksmanship instructor, 10 years as a part-time police officer, and 17 years working in state government doing security work and supervision. He is the best-selling author of Oath Takers, has authored 4 books in a series called Tyrant and is working on the 6th, a final book in that series. And I know very well it's done now. The Tyrant series is all written, and it's a great series to read. I highly suggest you get out there and check that out. I mean, and then Doug also did some character spin-off books as well, which are pretty cool. And he has been married for over 20 years, has 2 children, and is faithful to his church where he resides in Southern Illinois. You can find Doug at www.ldouglashogan.com. That's www.ldouglashogan.com. So let's go ahead and welcome Doug to the show. Today, I am so excited to have Doug Hogan back on the show. Doug, thank you so much for taking the time to appear on the Changing Earth podcast again this season.
Thank you for having me back, Sarah.
I appreciate your time. Always, always. So today, it's kind of my books kind of went into a darker area. I introduced my new villain, Swenson, and we're going down this road. He has Erica captured. And it really brought up a lot of issues to me as far as a male situation in a survival situation and a female situation in a survival situation, if I'm allowed to say that nowadays, because with all the crazy crap that's going on in our world. So we're going to look at it from just male and female, right?
Sounds good.
So basically today we're just going to have a conversation about differences, and you've got to agree that there are differences when it comes to survival situations.
I couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm. So let's go first through some of the advantages and disadvantages of being a woman in a survival situation.
Well, when I was a woman.
Yeah.
Oh,
Back when I started out.
All right. So, there could be advantages or disadvantages. This one here, but I'm thinking, depending on the situation, but generally speaking, women are more emotional than men. It's just the way that they're wired. Men that I've known are more logically thinking. I'm not saying that's the exception for either one. It's just the norm. It's just the way that we're wired. So sometimes those emotions can be utilized in such a way for a female as to save a life rather than to take one. You being a fiction writer, me being a fiction writer, we might have a female, that with a male that is trying to save a life, and the dude is like, let's just kill him now. He's rationally thinking here. He's like, he's going to burn up our resources. He's going to take the food. He's going to take the water. We don't know too much about him. He might turn on us. He might take our weapons. And I mean, that's what the guy's thinking. The woman's thinking, well, he seems pretty nice. He's got a smile. He's pleasant speaking. She got all these emotional things going on, and that might be.
He could be utilized in different ways. Like we could put him to work, and maybe he'd be an asset.
Yeah. So and maybe on down the road, it turns out that the dude is pretty cool. And glad we didn't put him out of this misery.
Right.
And
I have actually that situation in my book with one of the refugees that they find that Vince is like, just kill him. This guy, Clint, and Erica's like, come on, dude. Like, he's got info. We can use him. They end up letting him live. And then like books later, Clint like helps them out, and he's like, hey, aren't you glad you didn't kill me?
Yeah.
Right.
So, so emotions aren't always a bad thing. They're, women and men, to me, this is how I feel. They're like 2 joints of the same bone. Does that make any sense? I mean, we need each other. I mean, we can't procreate without each other. I don't believe that one is strong and one is weak. We're equal. There's some things that's weak in a man. There's some things that's weak in a woman. There's something that's strong in a man. There's some things that's weak in a woman. But we're talking now about the differences in survival situations where the tables have turned. We're not now it's man eat man. It's dog eat dog. It's now it's down to survival of the fittest, and it's come to a situation where only the strong survive. So it's my belief that women have stronger figures,
right?
But they can go ahead.
Do you think that okay, so I'm like 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing, right? So do you think that females might be underestimated in that kind of situation? Like if you're a female, knows how to defend yourself, knows how to, go into combat, survival skills and stuff like that. You come up on a group of guys that they might like underestimate your abilities, right? They'd be like, "Oh, who's this chick?" Right?
Right. I'm 6'5", and 220 pounds. If I
Right?
see, a woman that's barely over 5 foot tall, I'm really not going to see her as a threat, especially if her hands are empty. You see what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
um,
Yeah.
the great equalizer is a firearm, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, in the United States, everybody is made equal. The great equalizer is that firearm. I might be
Yeah.
bigger than you, I may be stronger than you. Smarts is something completely different. It doesn't even come into the equation here. That's not something that's more of it's fluid. You can be, generally speaking, men are stronger than women, but you can't
Yep.
generalize brain power. Women could be stronger, smarter than men on almost every front, just like a man can be almost smarter than women. There's nothing that
Yep.
you can say is relative or consistent like that. It's not static. But I would definitely underestimate you. But you are a jujitsu, and I wouldn't know that if I was meeting you, right off the bat. I would just see a 5 foot nothing lady.
100 nothing. Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, and if your hands are empty, I'm not going to see you as a threat, and that would be definitely be an asset,
Right.
in an advantage in a post-apoc scenario, because you can use that to your advantage, and if you're my friend, I could use that to my advantage. I could
Right.
get you to do things, that could get somebody to lower their guard a little bit, because they don't see two threats, they see one threat, if we're together.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. I didn't think about like the group aspect of it, or you could just send her in first kind of thing and like do the cover, and everybody, oh, that's cool. It's just, some little chick walking up, no big
Yeah.
deal. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, get the cat calls going. They're not pointing their weapons at you no more. They're like, ooh, look, check this out.
So this is an issue I've been dealing with a little bit, the chivalrousness in guys. So some men are actually like more mindful of their behavior and protectors, right? When there's a female involved, whereas they're not really when it's just all guys kind of thing. So is that something that could work towards a woman's advantage, or is that kind of a backfire there?
I have one of my characters in my Tyrant series, is her name is Tori Cunningham, and she's a strong female lead, and
She's
I
awesome.
write, yeah, right. But
Yeah.
I wrote her awesome, because in Blood Core she picks up, she has a friend with her, and between the two of them, they have this charm as females, that it tends to latch on to the stereotypical male. So any man will let their guard down a little bit to a female. It's just because it's the way that they are wired. All men, I shouldn't say all men. It's the norm for men to let their guard down a little bit when they're talking to women. Yeah, I think it's the chivalry thing. Males will definitely be more chivalrous towards females, and it might be a good idea, to have maybe somebody with a good speaking female with charisma to do a lot of the talking when you're trying to communicate to other survival groups, for example, in a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I was kind of opened my eyes to when I was researching this topic is like the amount of help that a woman might receive, just because of the fact that you're a woman, and then the chivalrousness that they would be like, okay, we'll help you out because you're a girl kind of thing, instead of being like, oh, dude, here comes another dude, and right.
Mhm.
So that could be a
So they're,
advantage there.
they're going to be more likely to be helped
Hmm.
than
Yeah.
the men.
And then also, like you said, the amount of because of that guard going down, to have your women as like your peacekeepers between groups, because they're more likely to listen to another girl or another gal that's talking about things. But you put two females up against each other, now you might have like the cat fight and everything, because women get
Yeah,
real protective of their like family, their group, their niche or whatever. So
I have
that can be
noticed that.
problems
I have
sometimes.
noticed
Yeah.
that that's generally the norm also. It's like, why can't women get along? Like you see guys get along all the time, but women are like,
Right.
they just want to fight.
The cat fight. It's like, no, you stay away from my group. Yeah. So another little tip that I picked up along the way was women tend and befriend. So like I was saying, they want to take care of their group, and they're more likely to befriend somebody, like you said, to have the emotion of, hey, maybe we should take this person in. Maybe we should, accept them into our group so that we have this added piece, that they use this relationship building ability to kind of take advantage of people, to be able to know what everybody's skills are and then point them in the right direction.
I'd say that women generally, especially befriending males, it's probably a dominant trait that they have in a post-apocalyptic scenario. It'd probably be advantageous. I'm not saying that that would be the norm, because I think, and we could talk about this a little bit, but I'm thinking, it could also be a disadvantage depending on. It really depends on the woman and her skill set. If she's very diplomatic, she might be able to communicate and befriend if she's got the right goals in mind, and she's got, if she's focused enough on what the end goal is, the end game is, she could get a whole lot more accomplished than if she's just going in, not really with a goal. She could, in turn, endanger the situation instead of repair it.
Fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense too. Anybody could kind of do that too. You'd just be like, it's either good or bad. You either make it work or you screw it up. So my other, and I didn't think about this one either, was that guys might value the women because of the fact that you can reproduce, right? So you could have 20 women survive one guy, and you're going to have, viable population in the future, so to speak. You need a little bit more than one guy, right? But you can't have one, you can't reverse that, right? You can't have 20 guys and one girl. That's not going to work.
No, because she can only reproduce every 9 months or more, right? So
right.
Yeah. But relationships definitely, and caring, for the individuals around them, women are wired better that way, I think, than guys are. Guys aren't really good at nurturing. They can be. They need to be taught it, I think, because usually, especially in a two-family home, the fathers usually take the lead and teaching the son how to be a man, and nurturing is generally not a part of that. Where the moms tend to take the female, the children, and nurture them and teach them how to be females, and so that's why we get, things have been so traditional. I think it's really hard for a single mother, to teach a man or like a male child how to be a man. She don't really know what she's doing. My mom and dad divorced when I was very young, six years old or so. To this day, I hate sports. I hate sports of all types. And I don't know, it's probably because my mom didn't instill that in me when I was a child. I didn't have a dad to teach me how to work on cars and all this, these different things. I had to teach myself a lot of those skills, how to work with wood and tools and things like that. Sports is a completely different thing. My mom didn't take me to sports. She didn't teach me about sports. We didn't watch sports. I just didn't, so in high school and gym, I played sports, but I never really developed a like for it. And that could just be because I wasn't raised that way. Likewise, in a post-apocalyptic scenario, the men are wired a very certain way. And if there's young men in the group, they're going to be instructed by the men on how to be men and how to be strong, And I think over time, I think the nurturing element and the emotional element, I think over time, all of that will kind of come out in the wash, that a female very early on that's used to, being a homemaker, for example, just as an example, you got a woman that's a homemaker and then the lights go out, it's going to take her some time to adapt to, being strong, not letting her emotions govern, her what she's doing, her actions and her thought processes and this kind of a thing. Likewise, the men go right into, wolf eat dog mode, right? So,
Right.
um,
Yeah. Protector mode.
yeah.
Hmm.
And I'm working on a book right now, where a small child is exposed to a lot of violence at a very young age. And he's a young man with Asperger's, and he's trying to grow up in this world, not understanding his emotions real well.
Hmm.
And he sees a lot of killing going on, and so he struggles with not necessarily right versus wrong, but feeling the emotions that are behind the decisions that are being made. That could actually be a strength in a post-apocalyptic world, because you kind of take your emotions out of the element, and you can go farther in a post-apocalyptic world if you don't let your emotions get in front of you and drive your thoughts and your processes and all these different things. If I'm not saying that it's ever going to be right to kill first, but people that
Right.
kill first and they move on, there's going to be no one that's going to, unless they kill the wrong person. He's got group members they know. If somebody gets away, for example, the whole group's going to come after you. But I guess my point I'm trying to make is people that trust less. I want to use the killing as an example. People
Yeah.
who trust less and avoid people will survive longer, if they have good survival skill sets and they can be on their own. Because being with groups of people just expose you to more dangers. So
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
just throwing
just
that out there.
internal conflicts as well.
Yeah.
As far as like the male role too with the young men, and they don't have the nurturing as much, like as an ingrained wire. The man, how a man treats his, partner, his spouse, that that teaches the younger male like how I should respect and treat females in general. So I think that's a huge piece when we have young men that are growing up without fathers, that they get they don't have that education on how to properly interact with females as much if they're being raised in that single home, or maybe their mom is just overly nurturing so they can walk all over their mother, things like that. And they're not getting that proper understanding of how it's supposed to be. I love your analogy about the joint, that it's two pieces that are put together in the same joint, right?
Right.
That's really epic. And
I, th- I think we need
yeah,
each other because we strengthen each other's weaknesses.
absolutely, I
I
agree with
don't.
that.
Men don't generally have enough emotion, so they need the woman to be that emotional aspect for them. And same thing for the woman. They don't generally have the logic, the strict logic that a man
Hmm.
has, and she needs that in her life. Being they strengthen each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's go into some of the disadvantages now of being a woman, unless you have more advantages that you want to add to our list there.
I do have one
Okay,
more
let's do it.
advantage.
Yeah.
I believe caloric needs, for example. Women, because they have their muscles are not as dense.
Yep.
The caloric needs of female is less than a man. This because the muscle density issue, that's the
Yep.
norm. I'm not saying, you could be a diehard. You just have to work out harder, a little bit
Yeah,
harder than,
yeah. Or like you could be a skinny guy and like a bigger gal, and that would be
yeah.
different. But yeah, on the general, you're absolutely right about that.
So, you got some chick that likes to work out. Your metabolism is probably pretty high because you exercise a lot and you have, but you got some man that doesn't exercise at all. He could have a low metabolism and low muscle density, for example.
Hmm.
So your caloric needs to be greater. But I'm just talking generally speaking. Men need more calories than females do, so it's definitely an asset to females. They don't have to consume as much, to get by for longer periods of time.
Yeah, fair enough. I didn't even think about that one. I like that. I need less. I especially, well, you're right. I do work out a lot, so I do need like some of the proteins and stuff like that. And we'll all be pushed a lot harder at that point.
Oh yeah,
Um, but yeah, on the whole, I mean, I'm 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing. I'm not going to be eating what you need to survive for sure.
and that's a lot.
Yeah, about that one.
Well, yeah.
Uh,
Truth speaking, and truth being told, I have to eat a ton more. Like whenever I'm lifting my weights, I'm at the gym all
hmm.
the time. I'm hungry all the time
Uh-huh.
because that's just because it's a muscle. Like I said a while ago, it's a muscle density issue. So the more muscle dense fibers you have in your body, the more calories they need. That's just how it
Yep.
is. That's a science.
Yeah, and you're just ripping through protein too when you're working out
Yep.
and stuff. So,
Yep.
okay, so let's go into some of the disadvantages.
of being a woman in this situation. And the first one that I can think of, so I'll tell a funny story. When my husband turned 40, I got him a vasectomy and a gym membership for his
You got
40th
him?
birthday. Yeah.
Was it a gift card?
Yeah, right. Here you go, baby. Because I was like, look, if stuff hits the fan, I'm a survivalist. This is what I study. We already have 2 children. And if stuff hits the fan, your sex life is over, dude,
Pretty
because there is
much.
no way that I'm getting pregnant, in an SHTF situation.
No, because you're not even going to have the nutritional values. You're eating literally for 2 people. That baby is going to be draining you dry. Like I don't believe that infants are parasites, but in that kind of situation, it would act as a parasite, sucking all your nutritional value out of your body. Over time, it could kill you
Yep.
if you're not eating.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when you're struggling for food anyway, and now, so we rely heavily upon birth control methods nowadays to live the, promiscuous lives, I guess, that some people live, and without birth control, even as a married couple, without birth control and that, you are just into like figure this out before anything happens, because there are like natural herbal things that you can do, and people count the days and stuff like that, if that works. I mean, Catholics have been doing that for years. So
You mentioned getting that done specifically for survival situations, right? So I told you earlier, when we were talking just before we started recording, my wife had that double mastectomy. And one of the reasons she decided or opted to not go through the reconstruction process, and mostly because we're thinking ahead about this, and she's like, what if, what if the power goes out? What if, it happens, when the apocalypse starts? There's gonna be no doctors, there's gonna be no treatment. If something goes wrong, if the silicone implant bursts, or
right.
Every 10, 15 years you have to have them replaced. So there's gonna be no doctors. At least none that you can that would be readily available. Nothing you can set up for an appointment. There certainly won't be any clean operational tables and hygiene environments. And
yeah.
So thinking ahead, these are smart moves. Doing these kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's got to be thought about like now before you're in that situation. One of the statistics that I found is that within 1 year, 85 out of 100 women of childbearing, that's in the childbearing years, could be pregnant. So, when you don't have any medical help, we know what happened to a vast number of women during childbirth. I had a difficult one myself with my second son. He had the cord wrapped around his neck. If we didn't have a doctor and they couldn't take him cesarean and stuff like that, the baby might not have survived. I might not have survived. It's really, really serious stuff. Kind of scary.
Well, there's 15 women there that's going to be fortunate.
Right? Yeah. They lucked out. They're like the ones that can't. Okay, so, and then we talked about the physical strength and size of a woman is typically less than a man. So that's something that I saw as a kind of a mixed bag of tricks, because the men will be more relied upon for physical labor type things. And without doctors, without access to medical care, if you get broken while you're doing the physical labor things, then that can be like a negative for the men. You might have more arthritis, things like that, because your bodies are being worked harder because the women just physically can't do that thing. So, it's kind of a mixed bag of tricks, because the women are also more likely to be victimized. So, a guy who's not chivalrous, who's not a good dude, sees 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing walk up and goes, oh, easy pickings kind of thing.
Yeah. Which is why it's important for women in these kind of situations to know how to protect themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they're not with a group.
Yeah, that's my biggest. Ladies, go like. Jiu-jitsu was super hard for me to start. I like to stand up fight, right? I'm a fighter. I like stand up fight, but jiu-jitsu is like very close and personal, and wrestling and things like that. And unfortunately, like 95% of the assaults to women are from a single individual, and they try to take it to the ground as fast as possible. So just learning a stand-up game doesn't really do anything for you as far as that type of attack goes. And, even somebody as, physically exerted, is I'm a very physical person. It was really hard for me to do, but the value that I'm getting out of it as far as self-defense is 100% worth it. So I encourage like all women to get out there and learn how to do this stuff on the ground.
The self-defense stuff that you learn, because it's not about overpowering men. You may never be able to overpower any man that you meet because you got such a small stature, but you can use the element of leverage, to your advantage. Because once they get you on the ground, they not only have strength on their side, but they have their weight on your side.
Yes.
So you have to learn how to use that leverage against them, and that's what you learn in these kind of martial arts and self-defense classes. So yeah, I agree with you. We need to encourage and get the word out, especially to our post-apoc women out there. They're your listeners that read our books and they're into the survival scene. They need to be prepared and know how to handle themselves, because their man might not always be there.
Right. And that's the thing. Everybody's like, well, my husband, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. What if, you're out on your own? You got to go get water or something. What if something happens to him? Men are going to be relied upon for the physical labor. That leaves them more vulnerable to getting hurt. What if he's hurt? And it's up to you.
He'll be targeted first, if you see a male or female walking, the guy's going to get dropped first.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. There's a disadvantage to being a male.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. True story.
Like, all right, hon. See you later.
Advantage of being a woman. You live longer.
So among the guy population, and I'm dealing with this kind of right now in my new book that's going to come out, is, how likely do you think it is that women will just be seen as a sexual object? Like my friend Dale that does the survivalist prepper, he was like, yeah, but Lisa has skills. She can, patch up wounds. She's a nurse. She does all this stuff. So she's going to be valued. I'm like, yeah, but she's also a female. So those things are just a bonus. Like some guys will just be like, yeah, well, you can do all that stuff. Great. We're going to keep you around, but you're also a female. Right. So how likely do you think that is?
Well, having spent 20 years or more of my life, in municipal, county, state, and federal service, I've seen the worst of humanity, because for your listeners, I've worked around the mentally ill for a lot of like 20 years now. Last November was 20 years for me, and I was a police officer part-time for 10 years, and ran in my county and some local municipal townships. If I had to throw a percentage on what I'm thinking it might be, I would say, and this is a factor that I've used a few times in my life, that it's the 10% factor. I believe that there's probably one person out of every 10 men out there who just don't give a hoot about the law and social norms. So that being said, in a group of 100 people, there's going to be 10 of them don't care anything about social norms. So if there's no law, if it's complete anarchy, if you're living, in an area where we're policing, the court system's down, there's nothing to hold them accountable anymore.
Right.
They don't care. They're going to do what they want. They're going to take what they want. They're going to kill who they want, because the repercussion is what? Nothing. They can try this, give it a shot, and see if they can get away with it. And let's talk about male sexuality for a second. Men are very visually driven. So if you're in a post-apocalyptic situation, and you got a woman there, and he hasn't seen a woman in some time, and he's one of those 10%ers, he's going to take his advantage, but he may wait until the moment is right, especially if he sees that you're in company and he can't get his way. He may buy time with your group, until he's alone with you, and have his way at that point. It's going to be very hard in those times to be able to trust anybody, because I've known a lot of sex offenders in my profession that manipulate family as babysitters or friends of the family, or counselors, whatever, for years and years. They spend a lot of time and patience waiting for an opportunity to victimize. So I'm not saying that 10% of everybody is going to be a sex offender, but I'm saying probably 10%. I believe this wholeheartedly. 10% of the population is not going to abide by social norms at all. They just won't care.
Yeah, unfortunately, when in a lot of sexual abuse situations, it is somebody who's close to the family, or even a member of the family. I have personal experience, that in my family, that it's like, it's usually that person that you actually trust, which is the scary part of it, because you
Hmm.
don't want to go around just never trusting anyone. But yeah, definitely a heads up on that one. Do you think that that 10% is likely to grow in a post-apocalyptic situation because of the lack of lawlessness?
I think it will. I mean, early on, it's going to be pretty low, but after you get, all right, so the die-off is going to start about a year into this, right? So
Hmm.
depending on what your apocalypse is, the die-off is going to begin about a year after. It could last a year into 2 years. The die-off could last a couple of years. I think in those times, your leaders of your family, for example, may get desperate, and if they can't trade for food or they can't work for food, that they would have to kill for food. And we're talking about normally good people who's trying to feed their child, their wife, their family, friends, their group, what have you. So yes, definitely, I think that 10% will grow the deeper you get into this thing.
Yeah, because when you start breaking one social norm, then
It
it's
becomes
the
easy.
right
It becomes,
the broken glass effect,
yep.
where once you do one, it just kind of starts escalating from there, because nothing happened before and I broke my social norm. So
That's how it works in the minds of criminals. They might start off doing a little petty offense, grabbing something off the counter and putting it in their pocket and walking away. They got caught, or they didn't get caught. So they're going to up the ante.
hmm
For long they're doing something risky. Maybe they get caught and they run. Or they punch. They do a holdup or rob. They escalate it, and they always up the ante and get more and more dangerous. And you can expect something like that in this post-apoc scenario. They'll start out something simple, and for long they're killing off people and doing what they have to do to survive. I
yeah.
would expect it.
And weaker males too, are also really, really vulnerable to these types of situations, because the alphas are gonna just conquer over. So weaker males should also be a little bit more heads up about their self-defense readiness and stuff like that. Get out there and train.
Yeah, because most of your uh, I wouldn't say this applies to beta males. I mean, you could have an alpha male. He's just a small statue dude. I call it the Chihuahua effect.
Yeah, yeah,
All right,
right.
so
Yep.
he doesn't know in his mind that he's only 5'4".
Yeah.
A skinny kid that can run fast to 1,000 pull-ups because he only weighs 100 pounds. Um, he's probably going to have a mouth on him because he's got that Chihuahua effect going on. He's a man. He's got the male masculinity. So yeah, he would probably get capped pretty early on.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He's going to have to
Like,
adjust and just stop talking.
so do you have any more really big disadvantages that you see from being male or a female in the situations?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, there's a huge one for women, and something we haven't discussed here yet is that women have a higher nutritional requirements during their menstrual cycles. All right, so
Okay.
okay, so you got women who at a very early age now are starting to go through these menstruation cycles, once a month, and during, they lose, on average, I had to look this up, a cup of blood during their
Yep.
cycle. All right, so
Yeah.
depending on, and that depends on that flow, right? So
Hmm.
um, all that blood loss means iron loss. And with the
Yes.
loss of iron, that becomes a very special concern because in the human body uses iron to produce hemoglobin. And hemoglobin does what? It carries, it's an element of your blood that carries red blood cells throughout your body. I'm sorry, that creates red blood cells that carry oxygen throughout your body.
Right. Yeah.
So
And removes waste, does a lot of really important roles.
does a
Yep.
lot of stuff. So if you don't have the nutritional requirements going into you, especially on that monthly cycle, you're going to be a drag.
Yeah.
Low iron, and you're going to have no energy. You could actually become a weak link in a chain. If you're holding a team back, for example, you got, let's say, for example, just as an example, you have to leave because there's a very large group coming to your location,
Hmm.
and it's way bigger than your group, and you can't stop walking. Because the female is losing a lot of blood, her iron count is very low. Therefore, her oxygen is very low. So her heart's working extra hard, trying to get the oxygen that's not there to parts of her body that needs it to be there, like her muscles, and other parts of her body that needs this oxygen. So she's going to be lagging behind, and either she'll be left behind, or the whole group is going to have to stop and defend her when the other group catches up.
Fair enough. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, know your wild forageables. And there's a lot of plants that are available that are really high iron count. Nettle's one of them. And, so know what those plants are, because you might not have the access to the red meat. People are going to be stupid. They're going to go out, be shooting animals like crazy, thinking they're going to be able to feed, somebody, not know how to preserve it. And, so you might not have the access to the red meat that would immediately reply or, resupply that iron. So it's really important to know the wild forageables on that note and what you can be eating to increase
I'll
the
admit
iron
you,
count.
I'm weak in that area. I'll tell you right now.
Yep. There's some good ones out there. Like I say, the nettle, curly dock, it grows in like swampy areas. And it's super high in iron. It's kind of like a spinach, kale. Yeah, I know.
I mean, I'll eat it in a survival situation.
Suck it up, man.
Yeah, I do a lot of hiking, and I'll tell you, whenever I stop to replenish my body with nutrients, I don't care what it tastes like. My body is craving those nutrients. I just throw it down.
Yep. Yeah, and that's exactly it. We're just gonna have to be heads up on that. So, I kind of hit on this a little bit, but how do you think overall the personalities of men and women would change if you're up against in the survival situation?
Without a doubt, I think the women are going to be mandated to become more masculine, and alpha-like, especially if they intend to, leave behind the typical lifestyle that I mentioned earlier, like typical, American female. Let's be more custom and talk about traditional stuff, the homemaking, for example. They have to leave that lifestyle behind, that they're accustomed to. So tracking out into the world of dog eat dog means that, she's going to have to take on the mantle of a wolf to survive. And what's awesome about females is they can appear to be helpless and feeble when in fact they may have great skill and survivability, so the other
Who, me?
right.
Uh-huh.
So the other alternative is to be a sheep, or look like, or at least appear to be a sheep, and in the company of sheep dogs, so you got the sheep dogs who are fighting off the wolves. But you can be a sheep, or you could be a sheep dog, or you could be, one of the bad guys.
And like you said, men are also very visually stimulated, so might not be the best idea to be very flaunting at that point. Just kind of try and blend in and have baggy clothes and stuff like that instead of worrying about your heels or your makeup and things like that.
The first thing I would say about a woman wearing heels in a post-apoc environment is nope.
Nope. Not
Yep.
in my crew. Bye-bye.
She's bait of some sort, first of all, because she's either dumb or she's bait, and either one, I don't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and guys, I see a certain segment just going like way more protector type, and some going the way of the unethicalness. Both male and female, that's going to happen. But I see guys stepping up more as like the grand protectors, protect my crew, protect my group, protect my family. And I could envision that happening more with their personalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could also get females stepping up and doing something like that too. If they have strong, diplomatic skills, and they're able to put aside that emotional element that sometimes keeps females from good leadership positions. And use a whole lot more logic than they're accustomed to using. They can take on a leadership position like that, and guys are okay with following anybody who's strong. They just have to be strong.
Yep. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, that kind of takes us through some of the big advantages, disadvantages. Hopefully, we gave people a lot of food to kind of chew on there and think about, reflect on. So, any more you can add to it, or you think we covered it pretty well?
I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, I do too. There was a lot of it was actually kind of fun. I thought I knew more than I did when I started researching and thinking about this topic. I was like, oh, this will be easy. I was like, oh,
Again, we strengthen each other.
Yep. Exactly. All right, Doug, why don't you go ahead and let people know where to find you, and then we'll end the interview.
Okay, you can visit my website at ldouglashogan.com. You can find me on Facebook at Honor Your Oath. You can find me on Amazon. Just hit in L. Douglas Hogan. You can find me that way. You can go to Google, punch into Google search for L. Douglas Hogan. There is a judge, L. Douglas Hogan, but I am not the judge. I am the author, L. Douglas Hogan. So
Nice.
yeah, just want to throw that out
Okay,
there.
Judge.
You may be seated.
Alrighty, thanks so much for your time today, Doug.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, Doug, thanks so much for coming on the show and joining us, bringing your information today. It's such an important topic to learn as a female because you have to be prepared for what you're going to be facing, you know. And a lot of strengths that I didn't take into consideration, honestly, before we started researching for this episode. And, you know, some weaknesses that have to be taken into account. And that's why I study a lot of self-defense. So unfortunately, you know, for you know, Erica in my story, when you're up against, you know, 5 guys and it's just you and you're 100 nothing and 5 foot nothing, I mean, the reality is that you're not going to be able to do anything about that. So short of, you know, taking your own life or something like that. So, you know, it's kind of a scary area for me to write this book. But in the meantime, I want to go ahead and thank all of my subscribers as well. Thank you so much for your support and your love. And if you'd like to become a subscriber, you can head on over to www.authorSaraFhathaway.com/support. That's www.authorSaraFhathaway.com/support. Thanks so much for listening today. We can look forward to The Endless Night. It'll be out in June, and you can go ahead and pick up that audiobook. And I have book 7 getting ready to go to the editor as well right now. So that will be exciting because I can put that one out maybe as early as July, definitely August. So a couple of great summer reads for you coming out, and I hope you check those out. And until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, Battle for the South, and Dark Days in Denver at www.authorSaraFhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.